And now we welcome on a good friend of the podcast, Michael Johnson, who has a new title, Commissioner of Grand Slam Track. You're all smiles. And what I love about this is sort of, we saw you in Eugene. You had to keep a tight lip, but now it's time finally to let the public know. What has got you so excited about this new role?
Yeah, what's exciting is we're able to, in this new role, I'm able to bring athletes and fans what they've been asking for and just screaming out for, as you know, Chris, over the last few years, more head-to-head matchups, more, fans getting to know these athletes, athletes able to connect better with their fans. Yeah, and athletes being able to realize more value for themselves. Fans are frustrated that, they're hearing these stories of the athletes that they love to support are frustrated and not being able to, capitalize on their greatness. So with Grand Slam track, I'm able to bring that to fans and athletes. So yeah, that brings a smile. That makes me happy.
We did have a conversation in our backyard at the CITIUS house in 2022 that, it's funny. If you go back and re-listen to that conversation, there's little breadcrumbs of like what would be in store eventually for Grand Slam track. But at the time, Kyle and myself threw out this idea to you. It was like, why, haven't you ever stepped into a leadership role within like the current structure of track and field? And so, now that this opportunity came about, what led to sort of like this, I wouldn't call it a change of heart, but now like you are in a position to create some change. And what happened in the last 2 years since that backyard interview that led to this being possible?
Yeah, a couple of things. So one, when we had that conversation, and a lot of conversations I've had over the years, people have asked me to get involved in the current structure of the sport. So getting in the current structure of the sport is primarily all around, sort of the federations that, are intimately involved in the organization of the sport. And that's not a structure that I thrive in. I've been an entrepreneur for the last 24 years since I retired, and that's an area that I thrive in commercialized businesses and ventures. Um, and so I was able to sell my last company a couple of years ago, right after we had that conversation. I sold that company, and yeah, and then it's left me with time on my hands to figure out what I want to do next, and the combination of those things and just what we're seeing right now in the sport of track and field, where it's the greatest collection of personalities I've seen in the 24 years since I left the sport, and then maybe even before. We're seeing unprecedented investment right now into sport in general, from a investment standpoint, from a media standpoint as well. There's an insatiable appetite for sport from fans around the world. So it's a great time to actually invest into sport. So all of those things came together, and made sense for me that this is the opportune time and the perfect time to actually take the sport to the next level.
So I want this, knowing that we've got limited time to essentially, this is you speaking direct to track fan, like the listeners of this show every single week. Like this is your target demographic. So I want them to leave knowing the who, what, when, where, how of Grand Slam track to the extent of what's public. So let's start with just sort of how this league operates, and it's different from anything else.
Yeah, so it's different from current track and field, but very similar to thriving professional sports, where there is an actual league, and that's what Grand Slam track is. We are a league of athletes, 48 athletes, best of the best in the world, a very exclusive group of the best, fastest, and most popular athletes in the world who compete 4 times a year, in major premier level slams, as we call them, that are, primetime television, that break through, that, are, high stakes, high prize money, $100,000 for first place, all the way through to $10,000 for last place. But our athletes, again, are part of the league. So we sign these 48 athletes to the league. They receive base compensation just like any athlete who signs with the league, in any other professional sport does. And but then they also are eligible for prize money on top of that. So um, the whole format of this of the league, our competition format is such that our athletes are grouped, 8 athletes in a group. Each one of those groups competes across 2 different race distances over a 3-day weekend. Their combined score across those 2 races determines their winnings are and the placers. Will be able to, from a presentation standpoint, present the sport and our events in a way that is modern, that allows us to really bring the fan, not just the avid fan, but the casual fan as well, into the sport and understand the sport, and be able to be entertained by it. So having time during our broadcast to be able to set up the races and bring people in and help them understand the players, understand the athletes and their stories, and understand, why they're here and why they have an opportunity to win this. And then letting that race take place and then allowing us to actually celebrate that race on the other side. I mean, as a fan, we want that fan, the avid fans are already invested in an athlete and they want that athlete to win. We want that casual fan to have that same feeling. But once that's over, the last thing you want as a fan who's now invested your time in that, but to just leave that event and now we got to jump over here to something else. We want to, we have time to celebrate that, allow the athlete the opportunity to be front and center, and and for people to celebrate their win.
Yeah. So one of the things that came up in our conversation in the backyard though was too many meets, and we were all kind of in agreement. But now here we are, 4 new meets taking place. You're calling them slams. How do we get the fans invested? And so I guess determining the stakes. Why should the fans care? Why should the athletes care to be part of the league?
Yeah. So, what fans have said they want is exactly what they're going to see, about a month from now in Paris at the Olympics. They'll see the best of the best athletes competing against one another, high stakes. Nobody makes any mistake about the fact that everybody wants to win that race, right? Only one person can, but everybody wants to. That's compelling. You're going to see, the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat. That defines sport, and that's why fans watch sport. You're going to see that over the past, last year is a good example. The top, we saw that one time with the top male sprinters. The top 3 male sprinters only competed against one another one time last year. The top 3 female sprinters in the world only competed against one another 2 times last year. The fans are there. They want to see it. It's not what we have in this sport is not a demand problem. It's not that people don't want to see this sport. They do. There are 2.5 billion people around the world who watch track and field, are interested in the sport of track and field. The problem is we're not providing, we have a supply problem. We're not providing them what they want. And Grand Slam track is designed to do just that.
When people will look at this, and some people may be quick to be like, well, the rich are only going to get richer. I think that the thing is, the track and field rich aren't all that rich.
Yeah, the track and field rich are certainly aren't as rich as the best athletes in the world in other sports. And that's what I'm here to change. And to make sure that those athletes, I've seen the frustration, not only with the athletes, that they are the best in the world, and not only are they not compensated in that way because there's no structure to do so, but also they're not recognized as well as they should be for their greatness. Whereas their cohorts in other sports are in much greater scale. And I've seen the frustration as well with fans because they're supporting those athletes. They love this athlete. And then they find that, oh, well, my favorite athlete is financially struggling and they're one of the best in the world. Or my favorite athlete is doing well, but not as well as this athlete over here in the other sport, and more people should know them and they should be doing better. And that's what I aim to change.
Yeah. So let's go through what you mentioned the athletes will compete multiple times. What is the structure of the events?
Yeah, so we divide the athletes into groups. We have 6-man groups, 6 female groups, short sprinters, long sprints, middle distance, or short distance, long distance, short hurdles, long hurdles. So each one of those groups, we have a male group and a female group, and each one of those groups, they will run. There are 8 athletes in the group. They will run 2 races over the weekend. So the short sprints It's 100, 200, long sprints, 200, 400, short distance, 800, 1500, long distance, 3K, 5K, short sprints, 100 or 110-meter hurdles and 100 flat. The long hurdles, rather, is 400-meter hurdles and 400 flat. And so each one of those athletes will run both of those races over the weekend. Their combined score determines their placing.
It leads to some interesting races sometimes where it's like, assuming, this is all when we throw out names, hypothetical, they sign and join the league. A Grant Holloway, yeah, on one day he's hurdling, but then the next day you get to see him in the 100.
Exactly. And, so you get to see it brings out the different skill sets of the athletes. These are all world-class athletes. They're all the best in the world. Some of them will have one of the events will be a stronger event for one of those 8 athletes, but the other athlete, the other event, the second event is the stronger athlete. So, but it's their placings across both that determines whether they win the slam or not. And it just provides one for our fans an opportunity to see these athletes 2 times over a weekend as opposed to just once. But it also adds some different stakes and some different strategy for the athletes when they're competing, and that just provides a better experience ultimately for the fan.
So, I think when we look online and you see sort of athlete X is pulled out of this race or that race, and, there were fans who probably bought tickets to go see them. There's been, obvious frustrations over time of not being able to see some of the best athletes compete. So, how do you kind of pitch that buy-in to the athletes? Like, this might be Kyle's job, but to compete in this league where it's like that you have to show up to these 4 events, and then what if they don't?
Yeah, so the athletes need to buy into the concept first, and athletes are, they understand. So, look, you're only going to be able to, when athletes say, "I want to be, recognized and compensated, for being the best in the world." Well, in order to do that, you have to then put yourself out there to entertain a financial source to be compensated. That financial source is fans. If you look at any other sport, I mean, like the Dallas Mavericks, which is my team, I was a former owner of that team, and I still follow them. We sold them, but I still follow that team. And, you know, they can't just show up when they want to show up and play. They have a schedule that is mandated by the league, and they have to show up and play on those days. And that's why, the athletes are making 10, 15, 20, $30 million a year because they are an entertainment source to a fan, which is a revenue source. And that's what we have. That's what a real true professional league provides. So the athletes who get that, understand that, will certainly buy in. But at the same time, the athletes themselves have expressed that frustration that, yeah, I want to compete on a grand scale. I want, more than just one time, like, every 4 years to be able to compete in front of a large audience where it means something and it's important.
When the first article came out about the league, there was I think a line in there that says you don't view this as a competitor to the Diamond League. And it's an interesting line to sort of like tread because it is sort of new and disruptive. So I'm curious if you could elaborate on just like how you don't see this as a competitor to the Diamond League. And I remember, Jonathan Galt tried to get you to ask the, answer the question. It was like, what are your frustrations with the Diamond League? And, you know, I'm not speaking for you here, but I don't view it as a league. It's a series of meets. There's no obligation for these athletes to compete. And that I think there's no through line through each one of them. And that is the first thing you need to consider anything a league.
Yeah, so I think that for us, what has been missing from the landscape of track and field is exactly what we're bringing, and that is head-to-head competition where all of the best athletes compete against one another. You don't see that again. Last year for the top 3 men, you saw that only one time, and that was in Budapest at the World Championships. You don't see that at the Diamond League. That's what's been missing. So what we're bringing, the reason why I don't see ourselves as a competitor to anything else out there, is because what we're bringing is very unique. It's its own thing. Look, the whole thing about the number of meets out there. There were 2,500 athletes, I believe, that competed in Budapest at the World Championships last year. That's 2,500 basically professional athletes in the sport. you do need a lot of meets to satisfy that sort of number of athletes. I think people don't understand or fail to understand how many athletes in this sport are considered professional and elite. You have to have a lot of meets in order to, because those people need somewhere to compete, right? So, but our athletes are the best of the best. They're their own exclusive group of the most popular, fastest athletes in the world. Nothing exists until now that gives them their own unique and exclusive league for them to compete in, where and for fans to find an area where I know if I go here, I'm going to see the best of the best. If you're a basketball fan, you know if you want to watch the best basketball in the world, where all of the best athletes compete, it is the NBA, right? We haven't had, and the same thing for every other sport. Golf, it's the PGA Tour, right? Football, it's the NFL. You have other leagues, but the best of the best have their own league. We have not had that in track, and now we do.
So I, got carried away, and thinking ahead a little bit. I'm not gonna let you go off with why no field events. I have to ask it because I'm sure there's people wondering what
Oh,
was the rationale. And I guess, just speaking to that when you're throwing out these stats, it sounds like there's more than one. It's not just you making these decisions. There is data and information behind every single reasoned decision.
absolutely. And we have our partner on this has done a great job of providing our data partner on doing research, focus groups, diving into the actual research and details as opposed to just a gut or a feeling. We have data to back this up, and we have to, given the level of investment that we put into this. Our reasoning for no field events is that one of the things that we understand about modern sports is and this is one of the rules that was absolutely critical in developing this whole product is one event at a time. We will have one event at a time. We will never stray from that. The athletes in those different events, in order for them to be on, that stage that we want them on, they deserve to have undivided attention on them. In a 2.5 hour window, which is our television window and live broadcast window and live in-person event window for an event each day, we can't put field events in there and fit it in if we're going to do one thing at a time. And that's something that we are adamant about because that's how you in this day and time, that's how you build a professional sports league.
As I go through the who, what, when, where, why, when, starting in 2025, so plans are already in the works. Where in the calendar does this fit without sort of, I'm sure the specific dates are still, kind of being finalized.
Yeah, so we will fit in the April to September window of the outdoor season. We will probably skew heavily towards the beginning of that season, where right now there is, athletes want to be, here in the U.S. They don't want to travel as much. There's a void there in that particular part of the schedule to some degree. And we will be heavily focused on the U.S. But we will remain a global sport. Our athletes come from all around the globe. We will have meets in other parts of the world, but two of our races of the four will be in the U.S. And we will be really focused heavily on the U.S., not to ignore any other parts of the world where we've got global fan base. But the U.S. is a real opportunity for us, and that's a part. That's something that has been talked about for quite some time now. Percepco and World Athletics about, we want to grow the sport. We need to grow the sport in the US. And that's something that we're focused on to try to help the sport.
The other where element is, and this is a tough one in track and field, where to watch it. I'm sure again, it's still early with like, broadcast deals being finalized, but that's a challenge right now. It's, even with the excitement of this Netflix series, like the follow through is the hard part here where, you watch Drive to Survive, it's easy to find it on, ESPN or the golf, full swing, you watch it on the golf channel, NBC, wherever it might be. If we hook track fans, they're going to have a challenge of like, how am I going to watch if I'm a Noah Lyles fan now, him compete during the regular season if you can figure out what that exactly is defined as. So I see an opportunity here for Grand Slam track to fill that void and be that follow through.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, so you're right. That has been a problem in the past. a huge problem with for fans, frustration for fans, but also in growing the sport, that it's very difficult to find and it's very inconsistent. One of the things that has been very validating for me and that I'm extremely excited about is that we've been talking to all of the potential broadcast partners globally and certainly here in the U.S. And the level of excitement around what we built with Grand Slam Track, the level of interest has been very high, and I'm very pleased with that. So we're in a very good position there. Our position is, we're looking for the partner that, believes in this and believes that they can really help and bring the resources to partner with us on this to really grow that fan base in the first few years.
An exciting little element is that, after, a couple months of conversation, Sidious will be a partner in helping with the storytelling side of things. How important is that, do you view it? Just sort of like you've, been on our shows, you've familiarized yourself with how we present sort of the sport and the athletes and showcasing that personality thing, but like, carving out that space for that new era and generation of just sort of like, you put it out, I think, on Twitter at pre, that's like these content creators nowadays, they're so creative and we need them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the more people, it's been frustrating for me. I'm sure it's been frustrating for you guys seeing some of the sort of incumbents in the sport and some of the, sort of powers that be in the sport, previously being a bit skeptical about welcoming in new storytellers, which just runs completely counter to, in my experience as as an entrepreneur of if I've got people who are willing to go out and sell my product for me, and I can create an economy for them as well, there's no better situation when I can provide content to them that allows them to be able to go out and sell my product, and then they can actually monetize the content that they're using. There's just no better situation. So absolutely, we will certainly embrace the influencer, the fan that's got, I don't know why I'm giving myself a thumbs up right now,
I give
but
you a thumbs up too. Yeah.
thank you, Chris. I appreciate you. Um, but that yeah, we will certainly embrace that. I mean, all forms of media, traditional media, but certainly new media as well, and influencers and fans who want to get out there and and talk about this sport, not just our events, not just Grand Slam track events, Diamond League events, Olympics, World Championships. Our objective is to come into this sport and draw new fans in and provide a new product, but also to uplift the sport itself.
Yeah, when, the concern may be from, whoever is running the credential side of things. It's like, oh, what if every athlete, asked for a credential for their own media team? That's a nightmare. It's like, no, actually, that's what I'm dreaming of. Like, because if every athlete could bring in, their videographer and all that stuff, yeah, it gets crowded and it might be a lot to juggle, but think of just sort of what's going to come out of it. And so, yeah, no, I'm with you, and I'm glad that you're opening those doors. Knowing I'm cognizant of time here, I guess, how are you going to measure success in these early years? Because, the challenge is going to be this thing, like for it to take off, right? Like it's going to take a couple years and maybe longer than you think. But I don't know how long you're thinking when I
Yeah,
say
no,
that.
look, I mean, I mean, this is my fifth or sixth business venture. And I've been very fortunate to have success in the past. None of those were successful, right out the box in terms of being profitable or realizing the actual and goal that the ultimate goal that we had for it. So and this will be no different, and you have to be set up from the very beginning as we are. I get this. I understand that this is, something that will take time. Our capital partners understand that as well. Our broadcast partners will certainly understand that because we've all done this before in our particular roles, and we know that what happens here is you have to believe in the product, and then you do your research and you do the work, and then and if you believe in that, then you continue to invest in it, and you know that the payoff will ultimately come. You have to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening, and different metrics to make sure that you're moving forward. No different than when you're training, and you'll have some, you'll have some good days and some bad days, but ultimately, believing that you'll get there and making the smart decisions to get there. And so that's how we're structured. That's what we'll do. The goal for us in the first, year, 2 years, 3 years, continue to grow that fan base. As long as we're continuing to grow the fan base and more people are watching our events, then we're on the right track.
Michael, I'm excited for this. Obviously we root for all the new, innovative, and disruptive things here at Sidious, and I'm excited. We'll continue and pick this up when we're in Eugene in just a couple days. But I appreciate you taking the time, and I think from this conversation you hooked and piqued some people's curiosity, and I'm excited for the follow through.
Yeah, no, we're excited, and I mean, this is all about it's all about fans and athletes. So if we've got some people interested, job done. Job done there.